Welcome to another season of Pro-2-Pro, where we sit down with entrepreneurs and successful business people and talk about their journeys to their success in their career. We go behind the scenes and have candid conversations with them and discuss health, relationships, fitness, and of course, business decisions, good and bad. If you're looking for inspiration, valuable business insights, and a dose of motivation, you're in the right place. Join me and my guests as we share our experiences, ideas, and stories that can help you on your own journey of growth and success. Welcome, and remember, keep it Pro-2-Pro. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Pro-2-Pro. I am here with my esteemed guest and friend, Jim Lavalle. Jim, welcome to the program.
Great to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to get you.
Excited to be recorded.
Yes, I know. For all you that I share my my tech issues with, Jim was recorded. We did a podcast, and we had a hell of a podcast a couple months back, and it's hard to even nail him down because he travels so much. He's in Arizona right now, and we forgot to hit record. So the challenges that we face technologically as we deal with these podcasts, but he's been gracious enough to give us his presence again, and I'm excited about it, especially in light of the fact that timing is good because we get to talk about some exciting things that you're involved in as well. Let me just preface my comments with, introducing you a little bit more. I know you're, a clinical nutritionist. I think you're board certified in that. You're also a clinical pharmacist, a professor, an adjunct professor in a couple of universities. You started. Did you start the A4M yourself? Were you founding or part of that? How did you get involved in that?
No, I wasn't a founder, but I came on pretty early. I mean, I've been with them for over 2 decades and develop a lot of programming with them. So yeah, I've been there, was clinician of the year and educator of the year with them, and really love the work there. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
That's where we initially met. I had gone with my wife to undertake peptides because I have a passion for anti-aging, and she's building that out in her medical practice. So that was exciting and just so educational. But for people who are hearing about peptides now, it's not something that you just started to do the past couple months. You have been a pioneer in peptides for a long time, written a couple dozen books on the topic and things like that. And what I wanted to share with our listeners and our viewers is to get a kind of behind the scenes view of your development into this field and your career path,
Sure.
which to me is extremely interesting. And I know the folks are going to be interested in hearing it. So why don't we start, a little bit about your background and your family life?
I had a great family life. I had a mother that loved me a bunch. I had a father that worked his butt off and showed me the value of hard work. Kind of second generation Italian immigrant family. So, it was all about you should be working hard and you should be really taking pride in a lot of what you do. It was that simple. There was no other answer to that. My father was a world famous chef, top 100 chefs in the world, developed all the executive chef certification programs that now chefs stand on his shoulders and have created these amazing careers as being chefs. Whereas, my pops was working, 16-hour days, 7 days a week, right? Back in the day, 1960s, 1950s. So I remember I was scrawny and I was one of those Forrest Gump kids, really. I had the corrective shoe because my feet were braced. But all of a sudden, it was like seventh grade, I grew up. I mean, I got big. I got big really early. In fact, I went back to my 50th grade school reunion about a month ago, and everybody was like, "You were so tall. What happened to you?" I was like, "Well, I kind of stopped growing, I guess, But
Yeah.
but I got passionate about training. Really got into lifting weights and eating well. Ended up getting a scholarship and to play football. Got hurt, couldn't play. Got collapsed a disc in my neck, which kind of put me through probably a couple of years of depression when all you're thinking of is you're going to be a star football player, right?
Yeah.
And that took a lot out on me. I mean, I definitely went down the rabbit hole for a little bit there, but I'm grateful for all of it. I mean, I got to tell you, I always believed in that. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I really think that the drive I have today, because I'm going to be 64 at the end of this month, right? The drive I have today, it all goes back to really understanding the value of working hard, having setbacks thrown in front of you, and yet just really fighting through that adversity to make sure that you land on your feet. I thought that was a tremendous learning curve for me, especially going through school.
So tell me, when you got hurt, I mean, it's interesting, for me, I kind of had a similar path with school and sports, and I grew up quick at a younger age and then stopped growing as well, which is, I think, the kiss of death for guys like us, because, you're all of a sudden the celebrity star in your little world, and you're great and everything, and then soon everybody starts growing and gets taller than you, and then a lot taller than you, and then you're
Right.
pressing all the time. But how you had that injury? Was that just towards the end of your high school, or was that in college?
Yeah. No, it was actually it was at an all-star game. I had already signed my Division I scholarship, and I went and played an all-star game, and I played it with 104 fever, which was really stupid, but I didn't want to miss the all-star game. And ended up, I had a few little problems with my neck, in high school, but nothing major. But I ended up collapsing a disc in my neck in that game. Probably because I was too sick, shouldn't have been on the field. But I mean, I had one heck of a game. I went out strong, uh,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
but that I basically ended my career, and I had to go. I had to go work for 2, 3 jobs to get myself through school, and got into bodybuilding, and trained really hard in that space. Qualified for a national event, won a competition, and so, I mean, I kept developing that, but it was really hard when I lost that. I didn't lose the scholarship; they had already committed it. I could have went to school, but I didn't feel like. Well, I didn't even play it down. I didn't even play one single practice on the field for the Toledo Rockets. At MAC, the MAC school, and I was like, hey, I'm not going. I'm just going to work my way through school, and I'm going to do what I need to do. I had no idea why I chose pharmacy school as my first degree. No idea. Other than I was sick so much as a kid, I was always in the pharmacy, and the pharmacist was really nice. So that
That
was
that
pretty much that was
that
pretty
that
much it.
that's funny, because I'm trying to also reconcile your dad being this renowned chef and our world of bodybuilding and exercise and food. Our love and hate for food as we work on our body dysmorphia and our training and our exercise. How did you reconcile
Oh,
that? Because I remember personally growing up in the 70s and the 80s, my parents looked at me like I had two heads when I got into weightlifting and bodybuilding. It was pasta every weekend, meatballs and everything, and bread and cheese, and I couldn't eat that stuff. So how'd you deal with
right.
that with your dad?
It wasn't bad. He was a continental chef. I mean, he'd bring me home like a 5 pound roast, and my brother and
Oh
I
wow!
polish off a 5 pound roast,
Oh
in
wow!
a sitting. I mean, I was, I mean, I think I got up to, at one point 280 pounds at 5 foot
Holy!
11.
Oh my
So, I mean,
gosh!
I was kind of a big guy, right? And strong. And so I ate a lot, and my dad was happy to provide it. Now, yeah, the weekend Sunday meal comes by, and mom's like, come on, you can eat a little pasta. How about some eggplant parm? Come on, this is good, right? I got to admit, I'd usually weekend and I'd have some because,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff is love, man. That's love
yep.
food right there.
Yeah, for sure. So you progress on. I mean, obviously a tight family. You see how your dad worked his ass off, and it played on you tremendously. But you said you had some rough patches. But what I find interesting is that you said that you just landed in pharmacy. You know, in that pharmacy space, which it's a very technical. You need to have strong, background and skills, analytical, logical. It's like some people stay away from that area, because of those challenges. Were you always good at math? Were you always good in science, and it just came to you naturally, or did you have to work at it?
I was pretty good at math and science. I mean, it was a God thing that got me into pharmacy because I still consider myself, I'm a clinical pharmacist. I love looking at research on extracts, peptides, nutrients, biologics, whatever it takes, emotions, anything that influences a receptor in your body. I love it, right? But I'm trying to train for a bodybuilding show while I'm going through the toughest pharmacy school in the nation. Like we were number one, University of Cincinnati. And it was founded by John Uri Lloyd Brothers Specifics. It was a drug
Oh,
company that used to do extractions of botanicals. They ended up selling to SmithKline as they became a drug company. But so University of Cincinnati, we still took pharmacognosy, or the study of plant medicine. We still did compounding, had to learn how to extract things from a material. Um, and we still did organic medicinal biochemistry. So there was, I mean, was I look back at now my 40 years of being in integrative care, I could not have been prepared by a better education. However, I almost failed and dropped and got kicked out of school because I was
I know, I know. You
training.
got to share that story with us.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
training, hanging out with a bunch of bodybuilders, and you know that bodybuilding culture, man. People are out late at night. You're doing, you're partying, you're doing stuff you shouldn't be doing. So I fall asleep. I still remember falling asleep in a midterm. It was my senior year, and it was a pharmacokinetics class. I get a horrible grade, and so it's like, oh my God, I'm going to fail my last course my senior year in pharmacy, getting ready to do the boards. And I went to the professor. He goes, hey, you know what? If you get in the top third of the class, you write some papers for me. I'm going to pass you. Well, I did what he said, and he failed me.
Wow.
And I had to go to Ohio State. I had to drive to Ohio State University and take the course, drive 4 days a week. I didn't get to graduate with all my classmates I'd spent, 3+ years with. That was embarrassing, to be honest with you.
Oh,
It was
oh, I
embarrassing.
bet.
I also started to understand that maybe I was dyslexic. I am. So I have a photographic memory, but I'm pretty close to photographic. I don't know if it's like, the brilliant photographic minds that you see in the world, but I remember and retain a lot. And it isn't because I read, over and over again. But the problem was, I get out and I take the course. It gave me time to study, do my internship, get my life together, got out of bodybuilding, decided, hey, I need to grow up and do things responsibly and do things that were healthy because bodybuilding, you got to start taking a whole bunch of stuff. And I just wasn't into that. I just didn't want to do that. And so I graduate, I get my license, I finish in the top, whatever, 5%, taking the boards in the country at that time. Maybe it was 10%, but it was, really up in the upper echelon. But I had a chip on my shoulder over that, a major chip on my shoulder.
Oh, I can
And
imagine.
and so when I got out of school, the very first thing that happened was I was working at the health department for a little bit, and doing kind of an internship rotation, finishing my degree, and I was loving working into like kind of the indigent area of Cincinnati, taking care of folks. Loved that. I really enjoyed it. But at one point, I ended up at Kroger's Pharmacy, Kroger Pharmacy, big national chain. You got a pharmacy, you got a food store. And they put me in this super rough neighborhood. I mean, it was bad. It was like, bars and chains on the windows
Oh, wow.
at night.
Well,
But I mean,
probably
I
because
was
your
so big.
size. Yeah. Probably because the
Yeah.
way you
Yeah. They're like,
looked,
hey,
they
nobody's
figured you
robbing
could
this
take it.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
This guy's going to squeeze somebody's head off if they try to rob him, right? So a lady comes up to me that night, and I'm at the pharmacy. I just got put there, just fresh out of school. And she gives me her diabetes medication. She goes off. She's on a Medicaid plan. She goes off to shop. She comes back. It's like 5 minutes before closing. I look down at her cart, and she was eating every food possible that aggravated her diabetes. And the backstory to that, of course, is, my grandmother was a fingerless, toeless, blind diabetic. I mean, I remember walking up to her when I'm 5 years old, and she's got a feel in my face to see how I've grown and got a little nubs, and she had the cataracts on her eyes. She's blind. It has a dramatic influence on me. I was like,
Oh,
my God, I
sure.
don't want to get that. My father was diabetic. Most of my uncles and aunts, all Italians, all diabetic, all getting heart disease. And I looked at her and I said, you mind if I show you around the store? Which I was not allowed to do. I didn't know that. I'm not supposed to leave the pharmacy. So I take her around. I show her some things, and I felt really good about that. Felt great about that. And next 2 weeks, a bunch of people came in wanting a grocery store tour in the roughest neighborhood in the greater Cincinnati area, which really showed me people want to know, no matter where their economic status is at, they want to feel better. They want to know the
Sure,
right
sure,
things to
sure.
do in general, right? And what that did was I said, we should tag foods in Kroger's. Let's tag all the foods that are heart healthy and diabetes friendly. And it's too stupid to know that wasn't going to happen. I go and get a meeting with the CEO of Kroger's. I want to still have my ponytail, still had the hole in my ear from my earring. This is 1983,
Yeah.
84. And, I said, I want to tag foods. I want to write a book with the Jewish Hospital Cholesterol Center for Research. They're the top research center for cholesterol in the country. Dr. Charles Glick was there. And I had already written the book. I'd already written a Kroger's Guide to Cholesterol and Heart Healthy Eating. I still have it. It's framed in my office, my very first booklet. And he said, son, I'm not about to tell our biggest vendors that make crappy food, that, they're not included in the program. It's like we're not here to tell people what to eat. We're here to sell food. And I went, all right.
Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting, Jim? What you got the first taste of like the big let's just say the white elephant in the room, right? That with regard to what you deal with. Fast forward to what we deal with now with big pharma and this whole approach, medicinal approach to things, and you got a
Yeah.
taste of that early on in your career.
Oh, I got it right away. And it was interesting because I didn't stop. I don't know if I'm too stupid to stop or I'm just what I call a bricklayer. My grandfather was a bricklayer mason, came over, immigrant. I remember watching him lay bricks and carrying, sets of brick up through, flights of steps. And I went to my head of my marketing region that was a pharmacist. I said, look, I want to test people for their blood sugars. I'm going to set up right outside the pharmacy. I want to tag all the foods that are heart healthy in the store. I'll go around and tag them with a big sign, heart healthy food. And then I want to have the guide. We'll create coupons. People will come in. They'll get their cholesterol screened. It'll be a wow event. And he said yes. And we found more diabetics, sold more glucometers, created the first, FDA approved food tagging system that went through Kroger, which was creating millions of impressions a month about food selection and really started their health food department. Before me, it was Oat Bran. That was their health food department, Oat Bran. And then they started realizing people wanted to buy these specialty foods, which, oh yeah, by the way, have a 40% margin on them instead of the 1.5 point they were getting for selling some national brand that was sitting on the shelf. And so that showed me probably the biggest, most important lesson in my professional life. And it was real simple. One lady in a very indigent community with a Medicare card at 8:55 at night, I decided to reach out and help her. It ended up turning into helping millions.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
always lived that way. I mean, I don't care if I go to an event where I would go to events when I first started out. My gosh, there'd be 5 people in the audience. Nobody knew me, but I'd give it the same passion because I didn't know which one of those 5 was going to turn into millions. And I've always done that. Now, of course, today I'm in front of 200 docs. Last week I was in front of 2,000. I think it's served me well to not think about who's in the audience, just think about how I can serve them and help change their life. And I think when you do that, it changes things.
It's really interesting. It's a concept we talk about in the, in this space with entrepreneurship and business people, that essentially you weren't going for a money grab in the beginning. You were following your passion associated with innately how you fill your cup. And it was a combination of your knowledge and the idea of sharing that. And
Right.
staying the course. When the door slammed on you, you didn't say, oh, okay, I'm done. You said, no, I'm going to continue on with
right.
it. And then you made that impact. As you progress, staying the course, fast forward 40 plus years, whatever it's been, it's paid itself, tenfold. It's exponentially. And what I find amazing about the space that we're in with regard to anti-aging, especially where we are now, is that there are so many people that still have no idea of what to eat, the impact that it has on your body, the medications that they take, all the things that they take in and how it impacts us, and that there are tools available. You just have to go out and find them and get to the right people, right? Because that's the other issue. You've got this, I hate to say it, I beat up a little bit on big pharma, but you've got, different paths of medical providers, one of which goes towards the path of a holistic approach, where they're looking at things, more along the lines of when you were in pharmacy school, when you were learning about botanical aspect of things, holistic approach,
Right.
versus, the chemical drugs. Yeah. And then introducing more chemicals rather than letting the body learn how to heal itself and grow with, natural products that we have available for us. I mean, I'm sure you can go on and on about it, and I'm sure that that's part of your discourse when you have these seminars and conferences.
Yeah, I think, it was interesting. I mean, what happened from that time where I developed that Kroger piece is I got the bug of helping people. Like, it's like, wow, I can reach out and change a lot of people. I just stopped. They told me, hey, kid, you did a great job. Now you're going back behind the counter. And I quit. I went to my first seminar, and I happened to be lucky. I went to one of my mentors and met my mentor, Dr. Alexander Wood. God rest his soul, passed away this past year. Started the Ontario College of Naturopathic Medicine, was a chiropractor, psychologist, brilliant, a smart clinician. And I got, he took me under his wing. I started learning, started applying it right away. I found a practice that I could work in. I started applying it. And then it all kind of cascaded from there. I'm telling you, it was almost like a tornado, because I started writing books, I started doing lectures. And then the University of Cincinnati called me and asked me if I'd be willing to speak and, be a faculty member there as a, appointed adjunct, teach the College of Medicine and Pharmacy. So, I published at that time, 10 books, a database, was working with CVS on their natural products rollout, Rite Aid, Long's Drugs, McKesson, teaching at the university, writing monographs, right? It was like 10 books and two databases by then. But it was interesting because I remember at the end of my years teaching there, it was like the 18th year. I taught there almost 20 years. I turned to my teacher, who was my teacher, instructor in school. And I remember saying to him, because now I've written like 26 books, 20 ebooks, 5 databases. I've got thousands of pages of written material. I mean, this is this today, but back then I was well on my way to all that. And I looked at him and I said, Dick, it was Dr. Richard Weiss. I said, Dick, what'd you think of me going through school? And because I had this guilt, man. I mean, I had this guilt that, oh my God, you failed a course. You're not worth anything. You really don't know what you're doing. You are a poser. Even after all the accomplishments, the books, the databases, the teaching for major corporations. I mean, in my mind, I was still a poser.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's crazy, man. I mean, and I turned to him and I said that. I was like, what did you think of me? And he said, well, first of all, Jim, you were one big muscle and we were all pretty scared of you. So, because I was bodybuilding, I'm walking around like at 265 at 7% body fat, right? I'm just like, I could bend a beaker, So there was that aspect. And what was interesting is he said, I don't know, Jim, you turned in your work, you passed your courses, and you got your license. What do you want me to tell you? And it hit me like, oh my God, you mean all these people that I thought were judging me, I wasn't even in their mind.
Man, you hit on two topics that I talk about all the time. The first topic is this imposter syndrome, in which it doesn't matter all the things you do to solidify your career and your position, you still doubt yourself. That whole bit. And then the other thing is your fear of this vulnerability of being guilt, this fear of being judged by people thinking that they're all concerned about you. And I view that in part, it's kind of like, I try to reconcile that. Is that a narcissistic view of oneself to
Maybe.
think that other people, because at the end of the day, they don't care, right? Nobody cares.
But hey, I'm living my life.
Yeah, everybody's consumed with their own life, but you think everybody's zeroing in on you. That's how I felt even when I was doing this podcast. That's how I felt when I went to social media. I'm like, I'm going to flub my words. They're going to say, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Why is he interviewing this person? And at the end of the day, they don't care. People don't care. But
I just want to hear what you got to say.
Yeah.
It was interesting because in my 40s, and I was a bit of a savant when it came to understanding systems biology.
You are a savant. You are a savant.
So I mean,
I've witnessed it.
Yeah. I mean, at an early age, I really kind of understood, like, biological medicine and integrative care made so much more sense to me because you're one big body and all of it's signaling each other. And, it's taken a while, I think, for healthcare to get to that place. And I think it's there now. It's approaching there now. And it's really exciting. But I remember, because of that insecurity and imposter syndrome piece, when I was lecturing in my 40s, early 40s, I'd say, I'd be more concerned about if somebody challenged me, I would have to beat them down with knowledge, which is horrible. I don't ever, there is no question it's a stupid question. If somebody knows something that I don't know, I want to bless them. I want to tell them thank you. And, hey, I didn't know that. And if it's in the middle of a class, let's talk about that because this is pretty interesting. And I think that was the transformation for me.
That's the humility.
I'm so at ease. Yeah, I'm just at ease now with what I know, where I've been.
That also keeps you learning, and that keeps you growing because you haven't shut the door. You're not, so self-consumed with your own knowledge base and thinking that you know it all. You're continuing on and evolving, which I think is a really interesting point. And I think it makes you so unique in this space because, as far as I'm concerned, you're beyond an expert with regard to this space and peptides, which has become, like I said, all of a sudden, maybe not all of a sudden in your world, but let's face it, maybe because of social media, maybe because of everybody living longer, wanting to live longer, maybe because of the aesthetic size of medical spas and people wanting to look good. It's become much more louder for
Oh
people
yeah,
to hear about. And your timing couldn't be better with that. So let's go a
yeah.
little bit. Let's talk. We spoke about your journey to where you are. And I'll get to some of the things you're doing now, but for the people who are listening and watching, let's just talk a little bit, and we'll keep it simple about peptides themselves, because I want you to share with them this fascinating field about peptides a little bit. So can you share a little bit about what peptides are to
Sure.
our people? Thank you.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, GLP-1s, everybody's learning about Ozempic and tirzepatide and
Yeah.
retatrutide. These are peptides. Insulin was the first peptide used in healthcare, developed in the 1920s, right? So peptides aren't new, but if you want to think, what is a peptide? A peptide is a small chain of amino acids, not as big as a protein, so they're not real big, they're kind of small, but they are compounds that your body makes to help signal keeping your body in balance. So if your immune system's stressed out and you use a peptide that's for, the immune system, you're trying to countermeasure, you're trying to create balance and restore function to your body. So, GLP-1s, right? Semaglutide, tirzepatide. You got all these people who have struggled with their prediabetes and obesity in our country. 43% of our country is obese. It's estimated that 50% will be obese before 2030, right? So on comes the scene of using the GLP-1s. Well, that come without a danger, because if people think it's a magic potion, they don't
Yeah.
really change the way they eat. They don't exercise. They don't take an opportunity to look at their lifestyle, right? If they don't take that opportunity to change, chances are they're going to lose a lot of lean mass, which is the enemy of aging and longevity. You got to keep your lean mass, and you're going to be dependent on that drug forever. You're going to get off of it and you're going to gain weight. Just like you hear in the social media, oh my God, GLP-1s, I took them, I lost weight, I got off them, I gained weight. But what did you do to change your lifestyle? Did you switch to a diet of more lean protein? Did you end up, eliminating foods that were high allergen foods? Maybe gluten and dairy is a problem for you. Are you eating late at night? Are you still, what is the way that you lived your life while you were using that med? Because a lot of people use them and just drop weight and don't do anything, right? And that's a problem. Now, you can use peptides for a lot of reasons: heal the lining of the gut, help to release growth hormone. As we get under stress and we get older, we stop releasing growth hormone. And growth hormone's kind of important to keep you youthful. So you can use a peptide that your body should be making that will tell your pituitary gland, hey, release the growth hormone. And then people lean out, they get better sleep. And so there's a lot of benefits to peptide therapies, but they're really, I call them signaling molecules that are giving information to your body to help to restore, enhance, or protect your health and your longevity.
And you really, that was a nice soliloquy with regard to peptides in general and what's going on in the industry. In part, you're the founder of this metabolic code that you've created, right? With regard, and that's
Right.
balance. And that, I guess, the segue of peptides and balance is how you may have in part come up with that. I think that balance is key across the board with people. As you mentioned, these peptides are not just this super quick approach. It's got to be balanced across the board with lifestyle. And that's the challenge, right? And I talk about that even on the podcast with entrepreneurs about balancing their life with regard to their career goals, making sure that they exercise correctly, making sure that their relationships, personal relationships are fulfilled, that they're not just so singularly focused on one particular thing. But with regard to our health, this is a big issue on the peptide space. For me, with regard to the peptides and some of the folks, for whatever reason in this space, Jim, there's a lot of naysayers. Of course, we know people tend to be negative about a lot of things, in part because they don't have the knowledge. Another reason is they're, passive aggressive. Who knows the basis for the naysayers.
Right.
But there's also like this concept of the FDA kind of squashing some things under the guise at times of it not being safe. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, a lot of different things that go on, and traditional doctors who may not, like your GP doctor, for example, or your internist. I think that many of them don't dive into the peptide world or don't have the anti-aging skill set or knowledge base to even counsel patients correctly. And I know personally that Big Pharma has a huge influence in the medical field, right? We know that. We know that they sponsor the schools. Sure. I had a guest on, a neurosurgeon, who basically told me that 70% of schools are supported by Big Pharma. And they want to basically keep these doctors in check with regard to even their protocols in part trickle down to Big Pharma back in the day. And some of the stuff I've been reading recently goes all the way back to Rockefeller and the production of compounds and oils. I mean, you can get into a whole litany of things as to how we developed into this. So how does an individual who is trying to make this leap in a space that is growing but is not necessarily known to all, and how do they move forward? How do they find the right people? What do they do? Because there are a lot of people who are clueless in this area.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say first thing is new ideas don't get accepted, old people die. Right? You just have to realize that information is coming over time, even though peptides aren't new. For a lot of people, they're very new. I think folks that are going to the International Peptide Society that I'm the chair of, and they're getting educated, they're spending time with phenomenal instructors, all clinicians that apply these in practice. I think that's valuable. I mean, you can't believe the social media pundit that maybe has no education in the area, right? Because people are getting information from everywhere. And then they're out buying not for human use peptides off the internet, right?
Yeah.
It says on it, not for human use, not for animal use. Yeah, give me that. Yeah, I want that, right? So I think that you got to look around and find out who's, in your community doing a good job. You got to find out how they were trained. And look, I mean, it's not new. I mean, pharma's been there. I mean, they've influenced my school of pharmacy. I mean, I'm not opposed. I mean, look, my brother and father both had really big life-threatening events that if it wasn't for Big Pharma, they wouldn't have survived. So there's a dual-edged sword to it, right? There's that thought that, hey, if we could all play in the sandbox really nice, pharma has its value. And then this integrative pharma, right? The more integrative approach has its value. And that would be awesome. But, right now it's kind of, I don't think it's that way. I think it's more, one side wants to be able to have all the balls, right? And I think that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously, there's this enormous value for compounding pharmacy because they create things specific for individuals. They create cost savings. When we had a national shortage, and we still do, of these GLP-1s, compounding pharmacies are stepping in, saving the day. And yet at the same time, they're much maligned, criticized, attacked. while they're out doing that good job saving the day, right? So I think that peptides are the single biggest thing to happen to help get people healed, because they've got all these influences: environmental burden, stress, sleep, food, drug history, exercise. I mean, all these things that are meshing together that create metaflammation, metabolic inflammation, which then starts to trigger damage to all your tissues and organs. That leads to inflammation aging. I think peptides are probably the most significant thing to neutralize where you are on that path towards metabolic inflammation and inflammation. But at the same time, you have to change the way you eat. Like what you just said. Hey, are you taking time with your family? Are you balancing your life? Because what I find what people do, kind of in the quote biohacking world, right? But I'm just a pharmacist. I don't know. But my point being is, we're not supposed to push our body. Our body's supposed to be in a system of measures and countermeasures. We maintain homeostasis. Look at the Sardinians, right? You got, hey, you know what? They eat breakfast at 7. They eat lunch at noon. They eat dinner at 5. They walk up and down a bunch of steps. They eat fresh food. They live to 100. They're not injecting themselves with 15 different peptides, and but that's one of the dangers of looking at that culture, because we think it's the olive oil that they're taking in, or there's something magical, and what it really is it's the completeness of their lifestyle. And I would say, when you look at those blue oceans societies, they all create relevance for people as they're aging. As people get older, they matter. They're still a part of the community. And I know that saved my father's life. When he was 79 years old and got duodenal adenocarcinoma, had a Whipple surgery, which is a dramatic surgery.
Oh, yeah.
Lower part of the stomach, the duodenum, the upper third of the pancreas, the most significant surgery you can have. Typically, you live 2 years at age 79. He came to live with us, started cooking breakfast for my son. My son's like, 4 years old, having this world famous chef cooking him breakfast, right? By the time my son's 9 years old, he's like, how come grandpa's always got to cook me breakfast? It's like, kid, you understand? You got the national chef of the year 3 years in a row cooking your friggin' breakfast. Shut up and eat the breakfast. Let him dote on you, But the bottom line was, it created a sense of belonging and value for him to live with us. And we just included him in everything. He lived to 91. From 79 to 91 on a Whipple. That isn't supposed to happen, right?
Yeah,
but
for sure.
We changed his diet, brought him joy. Of course, I made him get on the treadmill. I mean, I had to get the whipping post out a little bit on him. What I mean? It's like, come on, Grandpa, you're gonna get moving, bro. But I'm just saying, when we look at peptides, when we look at Tibetan goji berries, or we look at spermidine, right? We're looking at all these therapies. It's really important to keep in mind that it's all about balance. It's exactly what you said about what you talk about with your entrepreneurs. Your body works the same way. It works in a systems of measures and countermeasures, and we want to keep them communicating well and keeping your body not burning too hard and not functioning well, right? We want to keep it right at that healthy spot. I think people lose sight of that.
Well, it's a very interesting point, and again, it's a holistic approach, because I know at these seminars that I go to, and I hear you speak, and the other doctors and professionals, it is this idea of how your lifestyle impacts you as well. It's not this static place of a snapshot in time, and that's so crucial. And what I find fascinating about this topic that people really need to understand, as opposed to the traditional path of medicine in which you're taking a pill for a symptom and the symptom is evaluated in a vacuum. That's not what takes place, or nor should it take place in the approach in which, the practitioner who's viewing this anti-aging in this space, how they handle things. And that's huge. That's a big difference, because in the aggregate, we're looking at a holistic view of life. You're not just looking at this Band-Aid. I see on big,
Yeah.
as it is, America has, we watch commercials in the evening, it's one pill after the other from Big Pharma advertising on all these different types of medicines. And if you have one symptom, okay, this medicine's giving you this, okay, we'll give you another pill for that. But there's no discussion about lifestyle. There's no discussion about the other things that go on as part of it. And so I think that people who are watching and listening to this, if they can get into this space and recognize, and I'm a firm believer in it, my wife is, she's got it part of her practice, that this can open up the door for people's longevity, their peace of mind, their happiness, their engagement. There's so much more to it. It's a ripple effect across the board, and the balance, i.e. your metabolic code balance associated with the lifestyle, really is.
Yeah, no, I always tell people, look, where you've been is going to dictate where you're going unless you change direction. Meaning, what kind of sleep do I get? What kind of food do I eat? What exposures do I have? What meds am I on? How do I exercise? Do I exercise too much? I got people that over exercise nowadays, right? So it's all a piece of, okay, if I'm here now, what choices do I make to get on that path towards longevity? Metabolic Code was developed because after seeing 300 to 400 people a week, I kept seeing these same imprinted patterns in everyone. People would be stressed out, their blood sugars were high, and their metabolism was low. So that was cortisol, insulin, and thyroid hormone. And then gut immune brain would be a big one, right? I'm starting to react to foods. My gut's permeable. Maybe I got a TBI. My gut gets permeable. Now the nervous system that connects my gut to my brain is triggering inflammation. Now my mood's eroding. I'm getting anxious. I'm getting foggy headed. So it was really born out of these 5 networks to make it easier to explain to people, because we forget, the typical person coming into an office, they forget 88% of what you told them after 48 hours. And that's on a 6-minute visit.
Wow.
So when you're sitting there explaining things for an hour and think they're all in it, right? Oh, amazing, amazing, amazing. You leave, you get in the car, and then they go, now what did they say about my gas?
Yeah.
Why am I so bloated again? What is it? And that's what we have to avoid, is not showing people how smart we are, but showing them the path in a way that they can understand it. And I don't want to say dummy it down. I want to say crystallize the message. How do we crystallize that message so that they hear it, they get it, and they want to act on it? And that's what the whole purpose of the Metabolic Code was. And I'm pretty proud of it, because now, as we alluded to earlier before we got on the show, I took on the chief science officer position with Lifetime, the massive, Healthy Way of Life company, right? It's no longer Lifetime Fitness. It's Lifetime, the Healthy Way of Life company, because they are committed to this holistic synthesis of your health. And we're using the Metabolic Code there because now we can show people, here is where your scores are in these networks. And when you diet and you eat and you take certain nutrients, maybe you're getting off of certain meds, maybe you're being put on a GLP-1 to help your weight loss. Where is your body moving? And giving them actual numbers that they can look at to say, you are getting better. And I think that's what was missing for a long time, is that, people didn't have they had no idea whether they're moving the needle or not.
Well, it's an amorphous approach, right? You don't necessarily know if you don't have a point of reference. You're just thinking.
Yeah,
You're looking in the mirror. You're hopeful that maybe the clothes are fitting better. I mean, maybe somebody's going to comment on you. You don't necessarily, but you don't know what's going on internally. I think it's a wonderful idea and concept. And for the people who may not know about Lifetime, my wife and I were founding members of the fitness Lifetime Fitness here in Tampa. They're opening up another huge one on Harbor Island. It's a national company. And you being, they're lucky to have you as part of it. And again, that step forward to a holistic approach across the board. I mean, from my wife and I obviously are in the lifestyle of exercise and fitness holistically. And we get asked all the time, what are you doing? This or that. And, consciously, it's not just one or two things, right? And I think a lot of people get this
right.
idea. They think that, oh, well, you're on peptides. Well, what are you taking? It's just not that. Well,
Yeah,
buddy,
yeah,
we went out to dinner and you had 3 scotches. Okay. I mean, that's not really helping you. It's like these things that, well, what do you mean? I'm relaxing. I go, well, that's a lifestyle switch you're going to have to make. You're creating inflammation. There's so much more to it. Well, I'm going to take that peptide. Well, that peptide's, you're going to be going on an uphill battle with the alcohol in your body like that. So I work so hard. I'm this hard working entrepreneur. Okay, well, then, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs have heart attacks, or I go to the gym and I see them. They got all the money in the bank, but they can't see their toes past their belly. So, I mean, it's
that's right.
this balance idea. So it's a great opportunity for you to share your message and really impact a lot more people, that want to
Well,
move from it,
it fits the model that when I started out in practice as a clinical pharmacist, it's, with the Kroger event, reach millions of lives. Now with Lifetime, the capacity to work millions of lives. And their CEO is passionate. Bahram Akradi, who immigrant from Iran, came in, built from the ground up this concept of Lifetime. He's just a forward thinking, really believes in that whole aspect of live, work, play. Hey, what's the balance between that? And I think we're going to see a lot of really cool data come out of it that shows that, taking nutrients, taking peptides, the way you exercise, the way you eat is going to make a huge difference in your lab values. And we're going to get a lot of data, and that data is going to, I'm hoping it will really get people to step up and go, you know what, maybe there's some value to this, and we need to start paying more attention to it.
Yeah, and stay the course. That's what I tell people. Stay the course. Don't accept this idea of immediate gratification in this Google world that we all live in, right? The people need to stay the course with the change and feel just embrace the change. Trust the process, right? Trust the process as part of it.
That's right.
Yeah. So
That's
let me.
right.
I've had you on for a while. I know you're busy. I just want to ask you a couple more things, and then
Sure.
I'll let you go. So we've talked so many things about that you're doing that are positive as you've kind of evolved into where you are now. Is there anything that you can share with us that you could think of in which, in hindsight, you look back at and you wish you could have changed, or you learned a tremendous lesson from the decision that you made at that time? I mean, obviously you talked about you failed out of school. That was something, that really hit you hard and you had a chip on your shoulder. And I think in part what that ended up doing for you subliminally is you say, I'll show them. There's no way. I'm a lot, I'll show you what I can do. And that may have instilled a fire. Is there anything, in your career as you evolved to where you are that you could think of that you may want to share?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. I mean, I think first of all, not being so hard on myself would have been a huge step forward.
Yeah.
Learning that was big.
Yeah, yeah.
And I really, growing up with my child, my son, and I had 2 stepdaughters. I did a pretty good job of, because I was flying around a lot. I'd fly back if I was a coach. I'd do a red eye to be there for practice, right? I mean, I can't say that I wasn't there. I would say that I probably could have relished the moment more. And I think that's not something that is rare. Like as we're going through our life and living it, we kind of think we're relishing it, but I'm savoring every aspect. My son's 24. He just came into business with me. So he's got his
Oh,
master's in human performance, in kinesiology. So I think that making sure that you're reaching for joy in what you're doing, and secondly, giving yourself the grace to, make mistakes, and that you're human, and that how do I work through that process? What did I learn from that to make me better? I mean, I think those are really important aspects of, for me anyway, of how I feel like I'm growing as I'm aging. Um, but not, kicking and screaming, man, kicking and screaming. I still want to go. There's so much to
yeah.
learn.
Yeah.
I'm,
But
I'm
those are
not
really,
consumed with when I'm going to retire. I'm consumed with what can I learn tomorrow?
those are strong words of wisdom. I talk about it all the time, and it's hard for many people to enjoy that journey. And we look back, especially as we're older, we look back at those times, and in many instances, it's like a blur, right? It's like it just like in a snapshot of time, it's gone, and you were so hard on yourself, or you may have been so self-consumed about something that you fast forward to and you go, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Why did I allow it to age me? And I tell people this all the time. If you lean into this uncomfortable place, you'll diffuse the power that it may have over you.
Absolutely.
If you try to enjoy the journey, and that's the good and the bad. Listen, part of the evolution of us as humans, right? We have to go through challenges to get better. It's not all about win win win. We're not in this silo, but we should try more so to be more empathetic towards the situations that we be in, the people that we're dealing with, because we only have one legacy, right? We only have one life to live. And I really, those are great words, and that's in theme with what I'm trying to talk about on this podcast and share with people. And it's a resounding theme as well, I find, with a lot of the guests, that in many instances they look back and they wish that they were a lot more easier on themselves, so to speak, in many ways. And even to this day, we still fight it, right? We're still trying to balance that.
Oh, absolutely. I also find a lot more empathy towards others because I don't understand the totality of the journey they're on and where they're at with their journey and how they may be feeling. And I really try to also work at giving others grace and not judging. Because I used to be, I'm Italian, it's like you got a hot head. It's like, come on, right? You start, the arguments are easy. The pointing the finger, the blame, all that stuff is kind of a part of the culture. I mean, if you're growing up in an Italian family and you're at a family reunion and if 5 fights don't break out, or at least shouting matches don't break out, everybody's like, what's wrong?
Exactly.
I mean, so I think that's the other flip of the coin is, hey, giving yourself grace. Hey, wait a second. Don't forget the person around you and what they're going through and what struggles they may have. And I think that served me well, at least in my clinical practice as well. Not just being a good clinician, with the physicians that I work with, but really just trying to say, I understand you're struggling, but let's figure out a solution to get you to the next step so that you can start to feel better. You can become empowered, and you can start to heal. And then after that, once that journey gets started for anyone, if they put solid feet on that path, man, there's no stopping them.
Oh yeah, that empowerment and that feeling of energizing or being that catalyst for an individual, that to me is the heroine. That to me is that high I get it too with when I consult with people, and I can see the light click on in their eyes, or I can see the successes that they may get. It's more than a monetary gain for me. It's just something where I feel so blessed that I'm able to be part of. And
Absolutely.
I will admit, like just like you, growing up Italian background as well, it took me time to come to terms with not being so judgmental.
Yes.
And that's something I think in part as we get older too, that we come to terms with. And if we could share with the younger generation who may be listening or watching this, ease up on that judgment pedal, and have a little bit more empathy towards the person you're dealing with, especially in this political world that we're living in too, right? It's
Right
mind-boggling.
Now,
There's no place to have, discourse. There's no open discourse of conversation, so we can all move forward together. And that we could go on for hours on that area as well.
Right on.
We'll save it for another time. But Jim, I just got to tell you, thank you so much. I had you on for an hour and a half, and you're a wealth of knowledge for people who are watching and listening. We're gonna put Jim's tags up for Instagram, his social media, his books. I mean, he's got a bevy of knowledge for folks who are interested in it. We'll post it on the podcast itself if people are watching, and we'll create some reels. And just thanks again. And remember, everybody, keep it pro-to-pro. That's all for today's episode of Pro-to-Pro. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest and gained some valuable insights into the world of entrepreneurship. Like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes, and don't forget to follow us on social media. Thanks for watching and listening, and remember to keep it pro-to-pro.